You know that feeling when everything in your world seems perfectly aligned? The hum of the dishwasher, the scent of a cherished meal simmering on the stove, the quiet anticipation of a loved one's return? That's exactly where Sarah was, just a few short years ago. Her heart was full, her home was warm, and in her mind, she was meticulously planning the perfect anniversary dinner for her husband, Robert. 8 years. 8 years of shared dreams, quiet compromises, and a belief in a future built together. She envisioned the candlelight, the laughter, the quiet rekindling of a closeness that had perhaps, admittedly, dimmed a little recently. She saw it as a chance to remind them both of the beautiful foundation they had laid. But sometimes the most mundane actions can unravel the most elaborate illusions. Sarah wasn't looking for trouble. She merely wanted to print out some recipes, a simple, innocent act. Robert's laptop, open on the desk, seemed the easiest tool. As she clicked it open, a cascade of notification sounds, previously unheard, suddenly burst through the quiet evening air. It was like a dam breaking, a silent truth now roaring into her consciousness. Her fingers, still poised to navigate to a cooking website, hesitated. Curiosity, that double-edged sword, pricked at her. Why so many notifications? And then a message popped up. A preview on the screen, revealing a name. Jennifer. The world, as Sarah knew it, didn't just crash. It evaporated into a sickening mist. There, on that screen in plain sight, were messages. Not just friendly work banter, but explicit, detailed exchanges between Robert, her husband, and this woman named Jennifer. The words blurred and sharpened before her eyes. Every illicit detail, every whispered plan, every cruel joke at her expense. It was a torrent of betrayal, a betrayal that had been flowing beneath her very nose for over 6 months. 6 months of lies, of secret meetings, of a life she didn't even know existed. Her hands trembled so violently she could barely scroll, yet scroll she did, compelled by a morbid fascination to fully understand the depth of the abyss that had opened beneath her. This wasn't just adultery. This was an excavation of her entire reality. The messages painted a picture so vile, so callous, that it made her stomach heave. Jennifer, Robert's secretary, casually referred to Sarah as that boring wife of yours. Robert, the man who had promised to love and cherish her forever, complained about how Sarah had let herself go and how he couldn't wait to be free of her. They discussed hotel rendezvous, meticulously planned their secret trysts, and then, the final gut-wrenching blow, they laughed. They laughed about how stupid Sarah was for not figuring it out. Can you imagine? The person you trust most, the person you share your life with, not only cheating on you, but actively mocking your supposed naivety. It's a wound that goes beyond the heart. It punctures your very soul. It makes you question every shared glance, every comforting word, every moment of intimacy. Was it all a performance? Was she merely a prop in his self-serving narrative? But the absolute worst, the part that turned Sarah's blood to ice, wasn't the infidelity itself. It was the future they were planning. The most recent messages, from just that very morning, revealed a cold, calculated plot that transcended mere adultery and dove headfirst into criminal intent. "I've been moving money to the offshore account like you suggested," Robert had written. "She has no idea about any of it. When I file for divorce, I'll claim she's been mentally unstable and spending money on gambling and shopping. My lawyer says I can probably get away with leaving her almost nothing if I play it right." Jennifer's reply, equally chilling, sealed Sarah's fate, not as a discarded wife, but as a target. "Perfect. Once you're free and rich, we can finally be together properly. I can't wait to move into that big house of yours. Do you think she'll cry when she realizes she's lost everything?" Robert's callous response echoed the emptiness within him. "Probably, but I don't care anymore. She's been holding me back for years. Time to start my real life with someone who actually matters." This wasn't just cheating. This was a complete, utter demolition of everything they had built. It was a planned financial annihilation, a ruthless attempt to strip her of not just her marriage, but her security, her reputation, and her very sanity. He wasn't just planning to leave her. He was planning to destroy her. He intended to claim she was mentally ill, to steal their house, their savings, their entire life, and hand it all over to his secretary. The sheer audacity, the cold-blooded cruelty was unfathomable. Sarah's legs gave out beneath her, and she collapsed into the desk chair, her world spinning, then crashing into a million pieces. 8 years. 8 years of building a life together. 8 years of supporting him through grueling law school, working 2 jobs herself just to make ends meet. 8 years of believing in their love, their partnership, their shared future. All of it, a meticulously constructed lie, designed to serve his selfish ambition. The messages continued to stream in, an endless reminder of his current betrayal. Robert, probably from his office, texting Jennifer, "Can't wait to see you tonight. I told Sarah I have to work late again. She's so trusting, it's almost pathetic." And Jennifer's eager reply, a heart emoji dripping with insidious glee. "I'll be waiting. Wear that cologne I bought you? The one your wife doesn't know about." The pieces of the puzzle clicked into place with sickening clarity. All those late nights at work? Jennifer. The strange perfumes, dismissed as client encounters? Jennifer. The mysterious credit card charges, explained away as business expenses? Jennifer. Sarah, the trusting wife, had been played for a fool, but as she sat there amidst the rubble of her shattered marriage, something began to shift within her. The searing pain, the raw shock started to coalesce into something harder, colder, something exquisitely dangerous. Robert thought he was so clever. He thought she was weak, stupid, naive. He had absolutely no idea who he was dealing with. The woman who had worked 2 jobs to put him through law school was gone, shattered by the words on that screen. But from the ashes of that trusting, innocent woman, a new one was emerging. A woman forged in fire, armed with a newfound resolve and an unwavering commitment to self-preservation. She would not go down without a fight. More than that, she would ensure he regretted every single word. With a cold resolve that surprised even herself, Sarah began her meticulous counteroffensive. She took photo after photo of every single message, ensuring dates and times were perfectly visible. She forwarded the most incriminating conversations to a personal email account, a digital fortress Robert would never suspect. She meticulously captured screenshots of the offshore account information, the very details he thought were so cleverly hidden. Then, with a chilling calmness that belied the storm raging within her, she closed the laptop. She walked to the kitchen, every step a performance, as if nothing had happened, as if her world hadn't just imploded. 3 hours later, when Robert strolled in, reeking of Jennifer's perfume, Sarah was in the kitchen, adding the finishing touches to their anniversary dinner. The aroma of his favorite dish filled the air, a cruel parody of domestic bliss. "Hey, honey," Robert said, kissing her cheek, the same lips that had just been on Jennifer's. "Something smells amazing." Sarah's smile was perfectly crafted, reaching her lips but never quite touching her eyes. "I made your favorite," she said, her voice smooth, even. "Happy anniversary, darling." Robert, ever the narcissist, looked slightly uncomfortable for a fleeting moment. "Has it really been 8 years already?" he murmured, a flicker of something unidentifiable crossing his face. "Time flies." "It certainly does," Sarah agreed, serving him a plate, her voice laced with an invisible barb. "It feels like just yesterday we were promising to love and honor each other forever." Robert quickly masked whatever emotion had briefly surfaced. Of course, those were good times. Good times, she thought, that he was now planning to obliterate for money and his secretary. But Sarah just smiled, raising her wine glass. "To us," she said. Robert echoed the sentiment, clinking his glass against hers, oblivious to the impending tsunami. As they ate, Robert couldn't resist. His phone, a silent accomplice, kept drawing his attention. Sarah could almost see him texting Jennifer, probably describing this boring anniversary dinner, counting down the minutes until he could escape this charade. Let him text, she thought. Let him think he's winning. Sarah had news for him. The game was just beginning, and he had no idea she was about to become his worst nightmare. He wanted to play dirty? She could play dirtier. And unlike him, she would never underestimate her opponent. The trusting wife Robert thought he knew was gone. In her place sat a woman who would ensure he regretted every message, every lie, every moment he had spent planning her destruction. He had started this war, but Sarah, with a chilling resolve, was going to finish it. The next morning, Robert departed for work as if nothing had changed, a hurried, fake kiss goodbye, just as he'd done for months while plotting her demise. The moment his car vanished down the street, Sarah sprinted to his laptop. She needed everything. How long? How much money? What was his exact strategy for painting her as mentally unstable? What she discovered was infinitely worse than she had imagined. The affair with Jennifer had blossomed 8 months prior, ignited at the company Christmas party. Sarah remembered that night vividly, Robert returning late, claiming he'd had too much to drink, responsibly sobering up. She'd felt a flicker of pride then. Now she pictured him in a hotel room with Jennifer, a bitter bile rising in her throat. But the financial betrayal cut deeper, a wound to her very foundation. Robert hadn't just been cheating. He'd been systematically siphoning their marital wealth for months. The offshore account in the Cayman Islands already held over $200,000, money from their joint savings, from stock sales, from bonuses he'd deceptively claimed were smaller than reality. He had been stealing from her, from them, for half a year, and her unwavering trust had blinded her. When he spoke of wise investments, she believed him. When he urged careful spending, she cut back, while he clandestinely funneled their life savings into an account she didn't even know existed. The most horrific revelation was his divorce strategy. Robert had meticulously compiled screenshots of research on how to prove a spouse mentally incompetent. He had fabricated a narrative, documenting erratic behavior, irresponsible spending, and signs of depression and instability, all entirely untrue. In one message to Jennifer, he gloated, "I've been keeping a journal of her episodes for months now. Completely made up, of course, but it'll look real in court. I've got her credit card statements highlighted to make normal purchases look like compulsive shopping. And I've been telling people at work that I'm worried about her mental state, building the narrative." Jennifer's reply dripped with admiration. "You're so smart. She'll never see it coming. By the time you're done with her, she'll be lucky to get anything at all." Sarah felt a wave of nausea. He wasn't just cheating. He was framing her, constructing a fake reality to steal everything they owned. How could someone be so monstrous to a person they once claimed to love? This wasn't just about greed. It was about absolute power and control, a psychological assault designed to dismantle her identity. And there was more. Robert had already engaged a divorce lawyer, a man named Harrison, known for specializing in high-asset divorces with difficult spouses. Their email exchanges painted a chilling picture. Harrison had assured Robert that with the right documentation, he could walk away with most assets, leaving Sarah with minimal alimony and no claim to future earnings. The key, Harrison had written, is to establish that she's been the problem in the marriage. Document everything that makes her look unstable, irresponsible, or difficult to live with. If we can show the court that she's not capable of managing assets responsibly, we can significantly limit what she's entitled to. Robert had paid a $10,000 retainer, using money from their joint account, money Sarah had helped earn, to fund his scheme of destruction against her. She continued reading, her heart breaking with each message. Robert and Jennifer weren't just fantasizing. They were actively looking at apartments, planning a post-divorce trip to Europe, Jennifer even picking out furniture for their new life together. They spoke of Sarah as if she were already a ghost, an inconvenient obstacle to be cleared before their real lives could begin. In one particularly cruel exchange, Jennifer sent photos of expensive jewelry, demanding Robert buy it with the money he was stealing from his wife. "I can't wait to wear these when we're finally together," she wrote. "Soon," Robert had replied. "Very soon. Sarah won't know what hit her." Sarah sat in the silent, empty house, shaking with a potent cocktail of rage and profound heartbreak. She had given this man everything. She had worked 2 jobs, eaten ramen noodles, and lived in a tiny apartment to put him through law school. She had sacrificed her own dreams, moved across the country for his career. This was his repayment, a meticulously crafted plan to destroy her and steal their shared future. But as the initial shock faded, a crucial realization dawned. Robert, in his self-proclaimed genius, had made one colossal, fatal mistake. He had utterly, completely underestimated her. He saw her as weak, trusting, stupid. He believed she would never fight back, never question, never uncover his insidious plot. But Sarah was not the naive woman who had married him 8 years ago. Life and this monumental betrayal had forged her into something far stronger. She had meticulously managed their household finances for years. She knew every account, every investment, every asset. She possessed copies of tax returns, bank statements, all the financial documents proving what was hers. Before, Robert began his pilfering, and now she had the irrefutable evidence of his affair and his criminal plan to defraud her. Robert believed he held all the cards, but he was profoundly, tragically wrong. Sarah, unknowingly, had been building her own hand, a hand filled with aces, and now it was time to play. She meticulously copied everything from the laptop, creating multiple backups in places Robert would never conceive of looking. Then she began researching divorce lawyers, not the kind who facilitate theft, but the kind who specialized in protecting victims of financial abuse. By the time Robert returned that evening, Sarah's plan, though nascent, had a solid foundation. He wanted games? She would play. He wanted sneaky and underhanded? She could be both. But unlike Robert, Sarah wasn't going to hurt an innocent person. She was going to give him exactly what he deserved. "How was your day?" Robert asked, reaching for his phone, already texting Jennifer. "Quiet," Sarah replied, a faint smile playing on her lips. "Just a peaceful day at home." She watched him, undoubtedly telling his mistress how boring his wife was, how he couldn't wait to be free. Let him think that. Let him revel in his perceived victory. 8 years of marriage had given Sarah an intimate knowledge of Robert, his weaknesses, his fears, his secrets. She understood how his mind worked, how to stay 3 steps ahead. He thought he was hunting her, but in his arrogance, he had just made himself the prey. The war was about to begin, and Robert, blind and oblivious, had already lost. For the next week, Sarah inhabited a meticulously crafted double life, a performance that would have impressed any seasoned actor. By day, while Robert, oblivious, plotted her destruction, she was orchestrating his downfall. By night, she flawlessly played the role of the loving, utterly oblivious wife, so convincingly that Robert visibly relaxed. She saw it in the smug smiles he exchanged with his phone, the tuneless humming as he dressed for work, the barely concealed excitement for his secret life. He genuinely believed he was fooling her completely, and that very confidence, that arrogant certainty, was precisely the weapon Sarah needed. Her first strategic move was to secure the best legal representation. Linda Morrison, a formidable divorce lawyer renowned for handling cases of hidden assets and spousal fraud, became Sarah's secret ally. Sarah found Linda through countless online reviews, testimonials from women who, like her, had been blindsided by betrayal, but had emerged victorious. "I need to be very careful about this," Sarah explained during their initial meeting, laying out the stack of damning evidence. "My husband doesn't know that I know anything yet. I want to keep it that way until I'm ready." Linda, with the practiced eye of someone who had witnessed countless betrayals, calmly reviewed the printed messages and financial documents. "This is a very strong case, Sarah," Linda stated finally, her voice firm. "Your husband has made several serious mistakes. First, he's used marital assets to fund his affair. Hotels, gifts, trips for Jennifer. Second, he's hidden marital property in offshore accounts. Third, he's planning to commit perjury by lying about your mental state in court." And Sarah leaned forward, her heart thumping. "What does that mean for me?" Linda's response was a balm to her battered soul. "It means when we're ready to move, we can hit him hard. Adultery might not carry much weight in a no-fault divorce state, but financial fraud absolutely does. And if we can prove he was planning to lie about your mental competency, that's going to backfire on him in a monumental way." Linda emphasized the need for strategy. Too fast, and Robert might destroy evidence or hide more assets. Too slow, and he might file first, putting Sarah on the defensive. The goal, Linda explained, is to let him think he's winning while we build an unbreakable case. Can you keep pretending for a few more weeks? Sarah thought of the fake kisses, the suffocating lies, the nights Robert came home reeking of Jennifer's perfume, climbing into their shared bed as if nothing was amiss. I can do whatever it takes, she said, her voice steady. In the ensuing days, Sarah initiated her meticulous preparations. She opened a new, separate bank account under her maiden name. She launched a small online business selling handmade jewelry, an innocent-looking venture that provided a legitimate cover for her independent financial activities. She also began her own meticulous documentation of Robert's every suspicious move. Unlike his fabricated journal, Sarah's records were damningly real. She logged every instance he lied about working late, photographed credit card statements detailing hotel charges on nights he claimed to be at the office, and meticulously tracked every suspicious phone call and text. Crucially, she began to play Robert's own manipulative game against him. "Honey," she said one evening as they watched television, her voice innocent, "I've been thinking about our finances lately. Maybe I should understand them better, in case something ever happens to you." Robert's face paled for a split second before he forced a strained smile. "Don't worry about that, Sarah. It's complicated. I've got it all handled." "I know you do," Sarah purred sweetly. "But I'd feel better if I understood where our money is invested. Could you show me sometime?" Robert, caught off guard, stammered, "Sure, maybe this weekend." Sarah saw the panic flicker in his eyes. Of course, the weekend arrived and departed with no financial disclosure from Robert. He concocted excuses, too busy, documents at the office, all precisely as Sarah had anticipated. She wasn't genuinely seeking information. She was sowing seeds of doubt, making him nervous, and it was working. Robert grew increasingly paranoid around his laptop, changing his password and taking the computer to work daily. He became jumpy at the ring of his phone, always checking the caller ID before answering. Sarah also noticed the increasing urgency in his conversations with Jennifer. Through subtle observation, she realized they were accelerating their timeline. Robert was growing fearful she might uncover something and wanted to file for divorce before she pieced it all together. Perfect. Rushed people, Sarah knew, made mistakes. Sarah capitalized on his panic to fortify her position. She copied all vital documents, storing them securely in a safety deposit box Robert knew nothing about. She meticulously researched their shared assets, ensuring she understood the true value of everything they owned. She also began reaching out to potential witnesses. Robert's previous secretary, who had abruptly left 6 months prior, proved keenly interested in Jennifer's activities. Robert's own brother, Mike, who had always disapproved of Robert's treatment of Sarah, was willing to testify about conversations where Robert had openly expressed a desire to get rid of his wife. But Sarah's favorite part of her meticulously crafted plan was the way she handled Robert's lies. Instead of confrontation, she deployed subtle, insidious traps. "I ran into Jennifer at the grocery store today," Sarah lied one evening, watching Robert's face for any tell. "Oh, that's nice," Robert said, his voice tight, betraying his unease. "She seemed surprised to see me," Sarah continued, her voice light, conversational. "Said she didn't know you were married." Robert fumbled for words. She probably just forgot. We don't really talk about personal stuff at work." "Of course not," Sarah agreed, a faint smile playing on her lips. "Although she did ask about our anniversary dinner last week, I thought that was sweet of her to remember." Robert's face went from pale to ghostly white. Sarah knew Jennifer hadn't been at the grocery store. She would recognize the woman anywhere from the messages. But now Robert was spiraling, frantically wondering what Jennifer might have revealed, what Sarah might have already figured out. These psychological games served a dual purpose. They made Robert sloppy and nervous, prompting more mistakes, and they allowed Sarah to reclaim a sense of power. For months, he had lied to her, manipulated her, and made her question her own sanity. Now she was the one controlling the flow of information, and it felt exhilarating. By the end of the week, Robert was a visible wreck. jumpy, paranoid, making frantic calls to Jennifer and his lawyer at all hours. Sarah watched him unravel, barely having begun her offensive. A flicker of pity almost surfaced, until she remembered the messages, the laughter about her stupidity, the plans to steal everything she had worked for, the utter contempt with which they spoke of her. No, she felt no pity. Robert had chosen to make her his enemy. Now he was about to discover precisely what kind of enemy she could be. The real fun, Sarah knew, was just beginning. 3 weeks into her secret investigation, Sarah had honed evidence gathering into an intricate art form. Each morning, after Robert left for work, she transformed into a forensic detective, meticulously uncovering layers of betrayal far deeper than she had initially imagined. It wasn't just about sex and romance. It was about money, status, and the cynical exploitation of another human being. Jennifer wasn't merely sleeping with a married man. She was an active co-conspirator, a willing accomplice in his elaborate scheme to defraud Sarah. The messages Sarah unearthed painted a chilling picture. Jennifer actively researching offshore banking, suggesting methods to conceal assets, even recommending the corrupt lawyer Robert had engaged. "You need to be more aggressive about moving the money," Jennifer had pressed in a recent exchange. "What if she gets suspicious? We need to make sure there's nothing left for her to find." Now, Robert's chilling response echoed his profound underestimation. "Don't worry. I know exactly how to handle Sarah. She's not smart enough to figure any of this out. By the time I'm done with her, she'll be grateful for whatever scraps I decide to leave her." Sarah printed that message, adding it to her rapidly expanding file. She pictured a judge reading those words in court, a grim satisfaction settling deep within her. But Sarah's relentless investigation yielded an even more invaluable insight than Robert's cruelty: his weaknesses. Despite his self-proclaimed brilliance, Robert was shockingly inept at covering his tracks. He used the same password for everything. He left incriminating evidence scattered across their shared computer. He even saved screenshots of his offshore account balances in a folder innocuously labeled Vacation Photos. The man who believed his wife too stupid to catch him was, in reality, the truly foolish one. Sarah weaponized his arrogance. She started posing seemingly innocent questions, precisely calibrated to trigger panic and elicit further information. "Honey, why did we get that strange bank statement in the mail?" she asked one evening, holding up a document she had skillfully printed herself using Robert's own banking details. Robert snatched the paper so forcefully he nearly tore it. "That's nothing, just a mistake. I'll handle it." "Are you sure?" Sarah pressed gently. "It looks like it might be important." "I said, I'll handle it, Sarah." Robert's voice was sharp, laced with a meanness she hadn't heard before, but then he quickly caught himself forcing a strained smile. "Sorry, just stressed about work. Don't worry about the banking stuff, okay?" Sarah nodded, the picture of an obedient wife, but inwardly, she celebrated. His reaction, raw and uncontrolled, spoke volumes about his escalating fear. Sarah also began discreetly following him, a tactic she never imagined she'd employ against her own husband. What she uncovered was stomach-turning, but tremendously bolstered her case. Robert and Jennifer weren't just snatching quick hotel encounters. They were openly acting like a couple, dining in restaurants, shopping together, even visiting real estate offices. Sarah, hidden in plain sight, captured photos of them holding hands, kissing in parking lots, and entering properties, building an undeniable visual narrative of their flagrant affair. The most egregious betrayal she witnessed occurred when Robert bought Jennifer an expensive bracelet at a jewelry store, using a credit card that Sarah's income helped pay for. Through the store window, Sarah watched Jennifer throw her arms around Robert's neck as he spun her around, a sickening pantomime of newlywed bliss. Sarah had to sit in her car for 10 agonizing minutes, battling tears and nausea. But when the tears finally subsided, a cold, unyielding anger took their place. How dare they use her money to celebrate their sordid affair? How dare they behave as if she didn't exist, as if her life and feelings were utterly meaningless? That night, the jewelry store receipt joined her rapidly growing evidence file. She had long since hacked into their joint credit card account using Robert's predictable passwords, meticulously tracking every expense incurred on Jennifer. Expensive dinners, luxurious hotel rooms, lavish gifts, even a weekend getaway to a resort Robert had dismissed as a work conference, all paid for with marital assets, all meticulously documented, all destined to facilitate his downfall in court. But Sarah wasn't merely gathering evidence. She was also protecting herself. Collaborating closely with Linda Morrison, she had begun discreetly transferring some of their assets into accounts Robert couldn't touch. This wasn't theft like Robert's actions. This was legal, strategic self-preservation. "We have to be very careful," Linda cautioned. "We can't do anything that looks like you're hiding assets, as that would hurt your case. But we can ensure Robert can't steal everything before we file." They moved money that was undeniably Sarah's, her inheritance from her grandmother, bonuses from her own job, savings she had accumulated before their marriage. It was a fraction of what Robert had pilfered, but it was enough to ensure she wouldn't be left destitute if he managed to drain their joint accounts. Sarah also started building her case for emotional distress. The messages between Robert and Jennifer weren't just proof of adultery. They showcased a sustained pattern of emotional abuse and manipulation. Robert had gaslighted her for months, making her doubt her perceptions when she noticed his odd behavior. He had lied to her face daily while plotting to dismantle her life. He had used her own money to fund his affair while simultaneously insisting they needed to economize. "This isn't just about cheating," Linda elaborated during one of their meetings. "This is about financial abuse, emotional abuse, and fraud. Robert has committed several crimes here, not just moral failures." The legal term for Robert's actions was dissipation of marital assets, the reckless spending of joint funds on an affair. In their state, this could compel Robert to repay Sarah double what he had stolen. "So if he's hidden $200,000, Sarah clarified, "he might have to give me $400,000, plus interest, plus legal fees, plus damages for emotional distress?" Linda confirmed with a satisfied nod. "Your husband thought he was being clever, but he's actually engineered a situation where he's going to lose far more than if he had simply filed for an honest divorce." A grim satisfaction settled over Sarah. Robert's greed and cruelty, she realized, were to be his ultimate undoing. As the weeks passed, Sarah observed Robert spiraling into a vortex of paranoia. He took calls in hushed tones, stepping outside, his voice barely audible. He acquired a second phone, convinced Sarah was oblivious to its existence. He even hired a private investigator to shadow Sarah, completely unaware that she had already spotted the man and Linda Morrison was meticulously documenting this harassment. "He's getting desperate," Linda observed calmly. "That's good for us. Desperate people make stupid mistakes." Robert was certainly making mistakes. His latest error, attempting to discredit Sarah by instigating arguments in public, hoping witnesses would perceive her as unstable. But Sarah, always a step ahead, had anticipated this tactic and began recording their conversations. "Why are you being so difficult about this?" Robert had yelled at her in a restaurant just the night before, trying to provoke a scene over a trivial matter. "I don't understand what you mean," Sarah had responded, her voice perfectly calm, her phone recording everything from within her purse. "I'm just trying to have a nice dinner with my husband." Robert's face had flushed crimson with frustration when she refused to take the bait. He, not she, appeared the irrational one, yelling at his composed, reasonable wife. Other diners stared at him, not at her. Later that night, the recording joined her ever-growing evidence file. Robert, so consumed with making her look bad, was inadvertently making himself look terrible. The trap, Sarah knew, was almost ready. She had documented months of fraud, adultery, and emotional abuse. She had secured her own assets and built an ironclad legal case. She possessed evidence that would not only guarantee her victory in the divorce, but potentially land Robert in jail for financial crimes. Most importantly, she had achieved all of this while Robert remained convinced he was winning. He had no inkling of the storm brewing. Soon, Very soon, it would be time to spring the trap and watch Robert's meticulously constructed world implode around him, just as he had so ruthlessly planned for hers. By the 5th week of her covert investigation, Sarah had become a stranger to herself, and to her surprise, she relished the transformation. The trusting, naive wife, who had believed every word her husband uttered, was gone. In her place stood a strategic mastermind, capable of outmaneuvering the man who considered himself a genius. Sarah's favorite part of each day became the quiet observation of Robert's lies, delivered with a straight face, while she sat across from him, privy to the complete, unvarnished truth. It was, she often thought, like watching a spectacularly bad actor fumble through a terrible play, except the stakes were her entire life. "I have to work late again tonight," Robert announced over breakfast, not even bothering to meet her gaze as he spun his familiar falsehood. "Big case coming up." "Of course, honey," Sarah replied sweetly, her voice perfectly neutral. "I'll save you some dinner." What Robert didn't know was that Sarah had already intercepted his text messages with Jennifer from that very morning. "Can't wait to see you tonight. Booked us the suite at the Marriott. This might be one of our last secret meetings. I'm going to file for divorce next week." Sarah's blood ran cold. Next week. Robert was planning to ambush her with divorce papers, confident she would be utterly unprepared, utterly vulnerable. He was about to receive the surprise of his life. That afternoon, while Robert was ostensibly at his work meeting, in reality a romantic lunch with Jennifer at the most expensive restaurant in town, Sarah was meeting with Linda Morrison, finalizing their meticulous strategy. "If he's planning to file next week, we need to move now," Linda stated firmly. "We can't let him get the first strike." "What exactly will happen?" Sarah asked, a tremor of apprehension and anticipation running through her. "We file first, which immediately puts you in the stronger legal position," Linda explained. "We'll request an immediate freezing of all marital assets, preventing him from hiding any more money. We'll ask for exclusive use of the marital home, given you can prove he's been living a double life, and we'll request spousal support while the case is pending." Linda spread a mountain of documents across her desk. Months of Sarah's painstaking evidence, meticulously organized and ready for court. "But the best part," Linda continued, a confident smile gracing her lips, "is that we're going to request sanctions against Robert and his lawyer for planning to commit perjury. When the judge sees those messages where they discussed lying about your mental state, Robert is going to be in serious trouble." Sarah felt a surge of exhilaration, mixed with a potent fear. After months of being the unwitting victim, she was finally, powerfully fighting back. "There's one more thing I want to do first," Sarah declared, her voice resolute. "I want to confront them. Together. I want to see their faces when they realize I know everything." Linda looked concerned. "That could be risky. It might give them time to destroy evidence or make countermoves." "They won't have time," Sarah said, her eyes glinting with determination. "I'm going to do it tonight, and we'll file the papers first thing tomorrow morning." That evening, Sarah set her plan into motion. She knew Robert and Jennifer were meeting at the Marriott Hotel, the very place they had conducted their sordid affair for months. Charging it all to credit cards, Sarah's income helped sustain. She dressed with deliberate care, choosing an outfit that spoke not of the dowdy housewife Robert perceived, but of the strong, self-possessed woman she had become. She wanted to look magnificent as she shattered their carefully constructed illusion. At precisely 7:30 p.m., Sarah walked into the hotel bar. She spotted them immediately, in a secluded corner booth, holding hands across the table like starstruck teenagers. Jennifer wore the expensive bracelet Robert had bought her with stolen marital assets. Robert sported a new suit Sarah didn't recognize, another ill-gotten purchase, no doubt. They looked so utterly happy, so confident, so convinced of their cleverness. A fleeting, almost imperceptible pang of something akin to pity touched Sarah, then vanished. Almost. She walked directly to their table and, without invitation, seated herself. "Hello, Robert. Hello, Jennifer. Having a nice evening?" The looks on their faces were a sight to behold, worth every agonizing moment of pain and betrayal. Robert's face drained of all color, his mouth opening and closing soundlessly like a fish out of water. Jennifer looked as though she desperately wished to meld into the booth, to disappear entirely. "Sarah," Robert stammered, how did you know we were here?" "Oh, I know about everything, Robert," Sarah finished calmly, her voice a silken thread of controlled fury. "I know about the affair. I know about the offshore accounts. I know about your plan to claim I'm mentally unstable. I know about the fake journal you've been keeping. I know about the lawyer you hired to help you steal everything we own." Jennifer, recovering a fraction of her composure, clutched Robert's arm. "She's bluffing. There's no way she could know about—" "About what, Jennifer?" Sarah interjected, pulling out her phone. "About the messages where you called me that boring wife and said you couldn't wait to move into my house? About the photos you sent him of jewelry you wanted him to buy with my money? About your suggestion to move the timeline up because you were worried I might get suspicious?" Jennifer's face went from pale to a ghastly shade of green. Robert looked on the verge of a heart attack. "How long have you known?" Robert whispered, his voice barely audible. "Months," Sarah said, a chilling smile playing on her lips. "I've known everything for months. Every lie, every theft, every cruel thing you've said about me. I've been documenting all of it while you thought you were so clever." She produced a thick folder, placing it decisively on the table between them. "This is just a copy," she stated. "I have the originals in multiple safe places, bank records showing how you've been stealing our money, screenshots of your messages laughing about how stupid I am, evidence of every hotel room, every gift, every romantic dinner you've charged to our credit cards." Robert, with shaking hands, reached for the folder, but Sarah pulled it back. "Oh no, that's not for you. That's for the judge who's going to decide how much of your future earnings you'll be paying me in spousal support. You can't do this." Jennifer finally found her voice, laced with desperation. "It's illegal to spy on people." Sarah laughed, a sound devoid of humor. "What's illegal, Jennifer, is adultery in this state. What's illegal is hiding marital assets in offshore accounts. What's illegal is planning to commit perjury in court. What's illegal is using marital funds to support an affair." She turned her gaze to Robert. "Did you know that dissipation of marital assets can result in having to pay back double what you stole, plus interest, plus my legal fees, plus damages for emotional distress?" Robert's face, already gray, seemed to shrink further. "Sarah, please, we can work this out. We can go to counseling. We can work it out." "Work it out?" Sarah's voice rose slightly, drawing the attention of other diners. "You mean like how you worked out stealing $200,000 from our accounts? Like how you worked out planning to claim I'm mentally ill so you could take everything I've worked for?" She stood, looking down at both of them with profound disgust. "You know what the funniest part is? You both thought I was too stupid to figure this out. You thought I was weak, trusting, pathetic. But while you were busy congratulating yourselves on how clever you were, I was building a case that's going to destroy both of you." Jennifer, surprisingly, found a flicker of courage. "You can't prove anything. It's your word against ours." Sarah smiled, the coldest smile she had ever given. "Really? Is it my word against yours? When I have recordings of Robert lying to me about where he was going, when I have photos of you two together, when I have credit card statements showing every hotel room and gift, when I have screenshots of messages where you literally discuss how to defraud me?" She leaned closer to Jennifer. "And here's something special just for you, sweetie. Did you know that knowingly helping someone hide marital assets makes you liable for those assets too? My lawyer is very excited to go after your personal finances as well." Jennifer's eyes widened with pure panic. She clearly hadn't considered the personal consequences of her avarice. "This is crazy," Robert interjected, attempting to regain a semblance of control. "Sarah, you're not thinking clearly. Maybe we should talk about this at home when you've calmed down." "Oh, that's perfect," Sarah scoffed, a bitter laugh escaping her. "Even now, even when I've caught you red-handed, you're still trying to gaslight me, still trying to make me think I'm the problem." She pulled out another document, placing it gently on the table. "Robert, I want you to read this very carefully. It's a psychological evaluation that I had done 3 weeks ago. Turns out I'm completely mentally stable. In fact, the doctor said I showed remarkable resilience and clear thinking, despite being in an emotionally abusive situation. Robert stared at the document as if it were a venomous snake. You see, when I found out about your plan to claim I was mentally ill, I got ahead of it. I have a clean bill of mental health from one of the most respected psychologists in the state. So when you try to claim I'm unstable, I'll have professional evidence that I'm not. Sarah gathered her papers, poised to leave. Oh, and one more thing. You might want to call your boss tomorrow morning. I sent him copies of all the messages where you bragged about conducting your affair during work hours and using company resources to plan your fraud. I'm pretty sure sleeping with your secretary while stealing from your wife isn't the kind of behavior law firms want to be associated with. Robert's face went completely white. His job, his identity, his income, his entire future, it was all tied to that position. If he lost it, he would have nothing. "Sarah, please," he begged, his voice cracking. "Don't do this. I made mistakes, but we can fix this." "You're right," Sarah said calmly. "You did make mistakes. Lots of them. And now you're going to pay for every single one." She turned to walk away, then paused, looking back one last time. "By the way, you should probably find somewhere else to sleep tonight, Robert. I've had the locks changed on our house. And Jennifer, you might want to start looking for a new job, too. Something tells me your current position is about to become unavailable." Sarah walked out of the hotel with her head held high, leaving behind 2 utterly shattered figures. She could hear Jennifer's sobs, Robert's frantic phone calls, undoubtedly to his lawyer. Let them panic. Let them scramble. Let them finally realize that the woman they thought too weak to fight back had just obliterated everything they believed they had won. Tomorrow morning, Linda Morrison would file the divorce papers and request emergency orders to freeze all marital assets. By noon, Robert would discover that he was losing not only his wife, but his house, his hidden money, and quite possibly his career. Sarah drove home to the house that was now legally hers, opened a bottle of wine, and raised a quiet toast to the empty living room. "Here's to underestimating your opponent," she said aloud. "Biggest mistake you'll ever make." The war was far from over, but Sarah had just won the most crucial battle, and she, resilient and resolute, was just getting started. The next morning, Sarah awoke in her own bed. The oppressive weight of Robert's lies finally lifted from her chest. She had slept more soundly than in years, relishing the thought that Robert was likely spending the night in his car or on Jennifer's couch, his carefully constructed world crumbling around him. At precisely 9:00 a.m., Linda Morrison filed the divorce papers, complete with emergency motions to freeze all marital assets and grant Sarah exclusive use of the marital home. By 9:30, Robert's phone was undoubtedly ringing off the hook, banks informing him of court-ordered freezes. Sarah, meanwhile, spent the morning indulging in a luxury she hadn't afforded herself in months: relaxation. She prepared a proper breakfast, savoring each bite, rather than rushing to make Robert's coffee and eggs. She sat in her garden, sipping tea, listening to the birds instead of Robert's endless stream of deceit. At 10:15, her phone vibrated. Robert. She let it ring, then again and again. By noon, she had 17 missed calls and a dozen frantic text messages from her soon-to-be ex-husband. Finally, she listened to a voicemail. "Sarah, what have you done?" Robert's voice was panicked, shrill. "I can't access any of our accounts. The bank says there's a court order. Call me back right now. We need to talk about this." Sarah deleted the message, pouring herself another cup of tea. The phone rang again. This time, it was Jennifer. "You crazy witch!" Jennifer shrieked when Sarah answered. "You've ruined everything. Robert lost his job this morning because of your lies. How could you destroy an innocent person's life like this?" "Innocent?" Sarah laughed, a cold, hard sound. "Jennifer, you helped a married man steal from his wife. You planned to move into a house that didn't belong to you, bought with money that wasn't yours. You're about as innocent as a snake. You can't prove anything." "Actually," Sarah countered, "I can prove everything, and I'm going to see you in court, sweetie." Sarah hung up and immediately dialed Linda Morrison. "How did it go this morning?" Sarah asked. "Better than I expected," Linda replied, her satisfaction palpable. "The judge granted all our emergency motions. All marital assets are frozen. You have exclusive use of the house, and Robert has been ordered to pay temporary spousal support of $4,000 a month, starting immediately." $4,000 a month? That's just the beginning, Linda clarified. Once we get to the actual divorce hearing and present all the evidence of his fraud and affair, the permanent settlement is going to be much, much larger. Sarah felt a thrill of victory. Robert, who had been so certain he would leave her penniless, was now compelled to pay her thousands every month, simply to sustain himself while they battled in court. "There's more good news," Linda continued. "Robert's law firm fired him this morning. Apparently, they don't appreciate partners who conduct affairs with subordinates and use company time to plan financial fraud." "So he has no job and no access to money?" "Exactly. And since all marital assets are frozen, he can't even hire a good lawyer to fight us. He'll have to use a public defender or find someone willing to work for free." Sarah felt a fleeting moment of something that might have been sympathy. But then she remembered the messages. Robert and Jennifer laughing about her stupidity, their cruel plans to destroy her life. No, she felt no pity. Over the next few days, Sarah witnessed the complete disintegration of Robert's world. Without his job, he couldn't afford the apartment he and Jennifer had envisioned. Without access to the offshore accounts, the lavish hotels and dinners were gone. Stripped of his confident lies, he had nothing to offer Jennifer but a future of mounting legal bills and poverty. Jennifer, it turned out, was far less committed when the relationship came with genuine consequences. Sarah learned through mutual friends that Jennifer had already moved on, dating a man with money, a man who wasn't married, and wasn't facing potential jail time. Robert, meanwhile, was reduced to living in a cheap motel, calling Sarah dozens of times a day, begging her to drop the divorce. "I made mistakes," he pleaded in one particularly pathetic voicemail. "But I love you, Sarah. I've always loved you. We can go to counseling. We can start over. Please don't destroy our marriage over one mistake." One mistake. As if months of meticulously planned fraud was a simple error in judgment. Sarah never returned his calls, but she meticulously saved every voicemail. Each desperate, manipulative message would serve as further evidence in court. The true satisfaction arrived 2 weeks later with a call from Robert's brother, Mike. "Sarah, I need to tell you something," Mike began. "Robert came to me asking for money. When I asked him why, he spun some wild story about you having a mental breakdown and stealing all our money for shopping and gambling." Sarah's blood boiled. Even now, completely exposed, Robert was still attempting to paint her as the villain. "What did you tell him?" Sarah asked, her voice tight. "I told him he was full of it," Mike said firmly. "I've known you for 8 years, Sarah. You're one of the most stable, responsible people I know, and frankly, I've been worried about Robert for months. He's been acting strange, lying about stupid things, just generally being a different person. Would you be willing to testify about that in court?" "Absolutely. In fact, I've been keeping notes about Robert's behavior because I was worried about you. I thought he might be having some kind of breakdown or midlife crisis." Sarah added Mike's testimony to her burgeoning pile of evidence. Robert's own brother, his closest family, would now testify against him. His plan to isolate Sarah and portray her as unstable had backfired spectacularly. But Sarah wasn't content with merely winning the divorce. Robert had sought to destroy her life, and she was determined he would face consequences for every single crime. Working with Linda Morrison, Sarah filed separate lawsuits for fraud, emotional distress, and theft. They also reported Robert to the State Bar Association for planning perjury and to the IRS for hiding assets offshore. "This isn't just about the divorce anymore," Linda explained. "Robert committed multiple felonies. He could face jail time for financial fraud, tax evasion, and perjury. Even if he avoids prison, he'll likely lose his license to practice law." Sarah pondered this. Robert, without his law license, would be just another middle-aged man with no specialized skills and a criminal record. He would likely end up in retail or a delivery service, barely earning enough to cover the substantial spousal support he would owe her. From successful lawyer to broke delivery driver, all because of his insatiable greed and the fatal belief that his wife was too stupid to fight back. The irony, Sarah thought, was exquisitely perfect. 3 weeks after the hotel confrontation, Sarah was settling into her transformed life. She had redecorated the house, purging every trace of Robert and his corrosive lies. She had enrolled in art classes, a long-cherished dream perpetually deferred while she worked 2 jobs to fuel Robert's ambitions. Most importantly, she had launched her own business. Leveraging her hobby of jewelry making, Sarah opened an online store specializing in custom pieces. It was nascent, but it was hers, an untouchable creation Robert could never claim or steal. One evening, as Sarah meticulously crafted a beautiful necklace, her phone rang. It was Robert, calling from yet another number she hadn't blocked. This time, she answered. "What do you want, Robert?" "Sarah, please. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for everything. I made terrible mistakes, but I love you. Can we please talk about working this out?" Sarah surveyed her peaceful home, thought of her burgeoning business, her newfound art, her life finally free from his lies and manipulation. "You know what, Robert?" she said, her voice unexpectedly calm. "I actually want to thank you." "Thank me?" "Yes. If you hadn't been so greedy, so cruel, so absolutely certain that I was too stupid to fight back, I never would have discovered how strong I really am. You thought you were destroying my life, but you actually gave me the best gift imaginable. You showed me that I don't need you at all." Silence stretched across the line. "I'm happier now than I've been in years," Sarah continued. "I have my own business, my own life, my own future. And the best part is, you're going to be paying for it all with the spousal support you owe me. Sarah, please. Goodbye, Robert. See you in court." Sarah hung up and returned to her jewelry, a business to build, a life to live. Robert could navigate his own future from his motel room. 2 months after filing for divorce, Sarah stood ready for the main event, the day she and Robert would confront each other in court, all evidence laid bare. She had prepared for this moment since the night of discovery, and she was more than ready to watch him answer for his crimes. She dressed with purpose that morning, choosing a professional navy suit that exuded confidence and success. She wanted the judge to see the competent, stable woman she was, not the mentally ill wife Robert had fabricated in his perverse journal. Arriving at the courthouse with Linda Morrison, Sarah was surprised to see Robert sitting alone at the defendant's table. His expensive lawyer was conspicuously absent. "What happened to Harrison?" Sarah asked Linda. "Robert couldn't pay his retainer after losing his job," Linda explained with a satisfied smile. "Harrison dropped him as a client last week. Robert's representing himself now." Sarah looked at her soon-to-be ex-husband and felt a momentary shock. In just 2 months, Robert had aged years. His hair was disheveled, his suit wrinkled, and he looked as if he hadn't slept in weeks. The confident, arrogant man who had planned her destruction was gone, replaced by a desperate, defeated shadow. When the hearing commenced, Linda Morrison presented their case with devastating precision. She laid out the irrefutable evidence of Robert's affair, his blatant theft of marital assets, his calculated plan to commit perjury, and his prolonged emotional abuse of Sarah through months of gaslighting and manipulation. "Your Honor," Linda stated, her voice resonating with authority, "this is not merely a case of marital infidelity. This is a case of calculated fraud, systematic theft, and egregious emotional abuse. The defendant systematically stole over $200,000 in marital assets while planning to leave his wife destitute by falsely claiming she was mentally incompetent. Judge Patricia Williams, a stern woman in her 60s, reviewed the evidence with growing displeasure. Her face hardened when she reached the messages where Robert and Jennifer openly mocked Sarah's perceived stupidity. "Mr. Thompson," Judge Williams stated, her voice devoid of emotion, "I'd like to hear your response to these allegations." Robert stood shakily, utterly lost and unprepared without his high-priced counsel. "Your Honor, my wife is—" "She's not presenting the full picture here. Our marriage has been troubled for years. Sarah has been emotionally distant, and she's been making some questionable financial decisions. Mr. Thompson," the judge interrupted, her gaze piercing. Are you claiming that these bank records showing transfers to offshore accounts are fabricated? No, Your Honor. And are you claiming that these messages between you and Miss Jennifer Carter, discussing your affair and your plans to defraud your wife, are fake? Robert's face turned beet red. No, Your Honor, but... And are you claiming that your wife forced you to spend marital assets on hotel rooms and gifts for your mistress? That's not... Judge Williams held up a hand, cutting him off. Mr. Thompson, I have presided over divorce cases for 20 years, and I have rarely seen such a clear-cut case of marital misconduct and financial fraud. Your own messages show that you plan to commit perjury by lying about your wife's mental state. You systematically stole marital assets and used them to fund an extramarital affair. You emotionally abused your wife through months of gaslighting and manipulation. Sarah felt a powerful surge of vindication, watching Robert finally grasp that his entire insidious plan was unraveling before a judge who saw right through his lies. But, Your Honor, Robert tried again, desperation clinging to his voice. Sarah is vindictive. She's trying to destroy my life over a mistake. A mistake? Judge Williams's voice rose, cutting through the courtroom's silence. Mr. Thompson, you stole over $200,000 from your wife. You planned to leave her homeless and penniless while you started a new life with your mistress. You created false documentation to make her appear mentally ill. These are not mistakes. These are deliberate, calculated crimes. The judge turned to Sarah. Mrs. Thompson, would you like to make a statement? Sarah stood, her heart pounding. This was it, her moment to articulate the devastating cost of his betrayal. Your Honor, for 8 years, I supported this man's dreams. I worked 2 jobs to put him through law school. I sacrificed my own career to help him build his. I trusted him completely with our finances, our future, our life together. Sarah's voice was steady, yet inside, she relived every lie, every fake kiss, every night he came home from Jennifer's bed and climbed into their bed as if nothing had happened. Robert didn't just cheat on me, Sarah continued, her voice gaining strength. He tried to erase me. He wanted to take everything I had worked for and leave me with nothing, while he started over with a younger woman. He planned to claim I was mentally ill so he could steal my share of everything we had built together. She turned to face Robert directly, but he couldn't meet her gaze. But the worst part wasn't the affair, or even the theft. The worst part was how he talked about me in those messages, how he and Jennifer laughed about how stupid I was, how pathetic I was, how easy it was to fool me. Robert didn't just betray our marriage. He tried to destroy my sense of reality, my confidence, my belief in myself. Sarah's voice grew stronger, radiating newfound power. Well, I have news for Robert. I wasn't stupid, and I wasn't weak. I was trusting, which used to be a virtue, but I learned to be strong, and I learned to fight back. And now Robert is going to learn that there are consequences for trying to destroy an innocent person's life. Judge Williams nodded approvingly. Mrs. Thompson, thank you for that statement. Mr. Thompson, do you have anything to say in response? Robert stood again, looking utterly defeated. I'm sorry, Sarah. I know I hurt you. I made terrible choices. And I'm sorry. Are you sorry you did it or sorry you got caught? Sarah asked, her voice cutting through the silence. Robert's face crumpled. I'm sorry for all of it. I don't know what happened to me. I don't know how I became someone who could do those things. Sarah felt no sympathy. His apologies, delivered in desperate voicemails, were too little, too late. Judge Williams reviewed her notes and delivered her decision. In the matter of Thompson versus Thompson, I find that the defendant has committed gross marital misconduct, including adultery, financial fraud, and emotional abuse. The court orders the following. Sarah held her breath. All marital assets totaling approximately $600,000 shall be divided 60-40 in favor of the plaintiff, with the defendant receiving 40%, minus the $200,000 he illegally transferred to offshore accounts. Sarah quickly calculated. Robert would receive approximately $40,000, while she would receive over $500,000. The defendant is ordered to pay the plaintiff permanent spousal support of $3,000 per month for a period of 10 years. Another $360,000 Robert would owe her. The defendant is also ordered to pay the plaintiff's legal fees totaling $50,000 and damages for emotional distress in the amount of $100,000. Sarah felt like she was floating. Not only had she won everything, but Robert would owe her over $1 million in total. Finally, Judge Williams continued, I am referring this case to the District Attorney's Office for possible criminal charges related to financial fraud and to the State Bar Association for disciplinary action. Robert collapsed back into his chair, all the air seemingly sucked from his lungs. He faced not just financial ruin, but possible jail time and the loss of his law license. Court is adjourned, Judge Williams concluded, bringing down her gavel with a resounding thud. As people filed out, Robert approached Sarah, tears in his eyes. Sarah, please, I know you hate me, but I'm begging you. Don't let them prosecute me criminally. I'll lose everything. Sarah looked at the man who had once been her husband, who had planned to destroy her life and leave her with nothing. You already lost everything, Robert, she said, her voice steady and clear. The day you decided I was your enemy instead of your partner. She turned and walked away with Linda Morrison, leaving Robert standing alone in the empty courtroom. How do you feel? Linda asked as they descended the courthouse steps. Sarah paused, considering. She felt vindicated, satisfied, victorious. But mostly, she felt free. I feel like I can finally start living my real life, Sarah said, and for the first time in months, she smiled a genuine, unburdened smile. 3 weeks after the divorce hearing, Sarah was tending her garden when Linda Morrison called, delivering news that made her day even brighter than the sunshine streaming through her flowers. Sarah, you're going to want to sit down for this, Linda said, barely containing her excitement. I'm listening, Sarah replied, setting down her watering can. The district attorney has decided to prosecute Robert for financial fraud and tax evasion. The IRS is also going after him for hiding assets in offshore accounts, and the State Bar Association has started proceedings to revoke his law license. Sarah felt a powerful surge of satisfaction. What does that mean exactly? It means Robert is facing up to 7 years in prison and will definitely lose his right to practice law. Even if he avoids jail time, he'll be a convicted felon with no professional credentials. Sarah thought of Robert's arrogance, his absolute certainty of his own superior intellect, his cruel plan to leave her destitute. Now he faced prison and the obliteration of everything that had defined his identity. There's more, Linda continued, her voice practically vibrating with triumph. Jennifer Carter has been fired from the law firm and is being sued by Robert's former partners for her role in helping him steal client funds. Client funds? Sarah gasped, her mouth falling open. Oh yes, that's the best part. Remember how cocky Robert got in those final weeks? Well, it turns out he wasn't just stealing from you. He was also skimming money from client accounts to fund his affair. The firm discovered it during their internal investigation after you sent them those messages. Robert hadn't just been stealing from her. He had been stealing from his clients, too. His greed had driven him to commit crimes that would utterly destroy his entire career. So, Robert is facing charges for stealing from me and from his clients? Exactly. The prosecution is calling it a pattern of financial crimes spanning over a year. They're asking for the maximum sentence. Sarah hung up the phone and walked back into her garden, marveling at the completeness of Robert's collapse. The man who thought he was so clever, so certain he could outmaneuver his stupid wife, was now facing prison and financial ruin. But Sarah's victory wasn't just legal, it was profoundly personal. Over the past few months, she had built a new life, one far superior to anything she had shared with Robert. Her jewelry business was flourishing. What began as a small online store had transformed into a real company with customers across the country. Sarah had discovered a genuine talent for crafting beautiful, unique pieces that commanded premium prices. More importantly, She had discovered her own strength. The woman who once worked 2 jobs to support Robert's dreams had, from scratch, built her own. She was successful, independent, and happier than she had ever been. Sarah was also no longer alone. She had started dating again, an unexpected turn after Robert's betrayal. Mark, a kind and honest man she met in her art class, had shown her that not all men were liars and cheats. Their relationship was built on honesty and mutual respect, 2 pillars conspicuously absent from her marriage for years. The contrast between Mark and Robert was striking. Where Robert had been secretive and manipulative, Mark was open and straightforward. Where Robert had attempted to control and diminish her, Mark encouraged her independence and celebrated her successes. Where Robert had made her feel stupid and worthless, Mark made her feel valued and intelligent. "You're amazing," Mark had told her just the night before, watching the sunset from her back deck. "I can't believe your ex-husband was stupid enough to lose you." Sarah had smiled. "His loss was the best thing that ever happened to me." And it was true. Robert's betrayal had caused excruciating pain, but it had also liberated her from a marriage that was slowly eroding her self-worth. She was stronger now, more confident, more successful than she ever was, trying to be the perfect wife to a man who didn't deserve her. 2 days later, Sarah received a call from an unknown number. When she answered, she heard Robert's voice calling collect from jail. "Sarah, please, I need you to help me. I can't afford a lawyer for the criminal case. I'm facing 7 years in prison." Sarah felt no pity. "And I'm begging you, for what we used to mean to each other. Please help me." "What we used to mean to each other?" Sarah's voice was cold, sharp. "Robert, you planned to destroy my life. You stole from me, lied to me, and tried to make me look mentally ill so you could take everything I owned. What exactly did I mean to you when you were doing all of that?" "I made mistakes." "You made choices," Sarah interrupted, her voice firm. "You chose to steal from me. You chose to lie to me. You chose to try to destroy me. Now you get to live with the consequences of those choices." "Sarah, please. I'll lose everything." "You already lost everything. You lost it the day you decided to betray me." Sarah hung up and blocked the number. Robert's problems were no longer her responsibility. A week later, Linda Morrison called with the final piece of good news. "Robert took a plea deal," Linda announced. 3 years in prison, 5 years probation, and he's permanently barred from practicing law. He also has to pay full restitution to his clients and to you. What about Jennifer? She's facing 2 years for her role in the scheme. Turns out helping someone commit financial fraud makes you an accessory to the crime. A profound sense of closure washed over Sarah. Justice had been served. Robert and Jennifer, who had reveled in their perceived cleverness and cruelty, were both facing prison for their crimes. But the greatest triumph wasn't their punishment. It was Sarah's freedom. She was free from lies, free from manipulation, free from a marriage that had slowly poisoned her life. She was successful, happy, and surrounded by people who genuinely cared about her. That evening, Sarah called her mother to share the news. "I'm so proud of you, sweetheart," her mother said, her voice filled with emotion. "You could have just accepted what Robert did to you and moved on quietly. Instead, you fought back and made sure he faced consequences for his actions." "He left me no choice," Sarah replied. "He tried to destroy me, so I had to protect myself." "You did more than protect yourself," her mother corrected. "You won." Sarah looked around her beautiful home, thought about her thriving business, her new relationship, her bright future. Her mother was right. She had won, completely. Robert had gambled everything on his belief that Sarah was too weak and stupid to fight back. He had lost that bet in the most devastating way imaginable. Now he would have 3 years in prison to reflect on how catastrophically he had underestimated the woman he tried to destroy. Sarah, meanwhile, would be building an even better life with the $1 million he was compelled to pay her and the strength she had discovered within herself. It was the sweetest victory she could have imagined. 6 months after Robert's sentencing, Sarah was living a life she never could have envisioned during those dark days when she first discovered his betrayal. The woman who once defined herself as Robert's wife had blossomed into a successful businesswoman, a confident individual, and surprisingly, someone who was genuinely, deeply happy. Sarah's jewelry business had exploded beyond her wildest dreams. What began as a small online store had expanded into a chic boutique showroom in the Arts District downtown. Sarah's exquisite designs were now featured in 3 local magazines, and she had a waiting list of discerning customers eager for her custom pieces. The success wasn't solely financial, though the money was certainly a welcome buffer. Sarah had discovered a profound talent for creating beautiful objects, and more importantly, she had found something that was entirely, unequivocally, hers. Robert had always dismissed her creative interest as little hobbies that distracted from his important career. Now, those very hobbies were providing her with a luxurious living. "I never thought I'd say this," Sarah confessed to her friend Carol over lunch, a genuine smile gracing her lips. "But Robert's betrayal was the best thing that ever happened to me." Carol raised an eyebrow, a skeptical glint in her eyes. "Really? Really? If he hadn't tried to destroy me, I never would have discovered how strong I could be. I was so busy being the perfect wife that I forgot I could be my own person." It was true. For 8 years, Sarah had meticulously molded herself to fit Robert's expectations, supportive, undemanding, invisible when necessary. She had intentionally made herself smaller so he could feel bigger. Now, she was unapologetically occupying all the space she deserved, and it felt exhilarating. The divorce settlement had undeniably contributed to her newfound independence. Between the substantial assets she had been awarded and the ongoing spousal support Robert owed her, Sarah was financially secure for the first time in her adult life. The gnawing worry about money, the dependence on anyone else for her security, was a distant memory. But the true victory was emotional. Sarah had painstakingly rebuilt her self-confidence from the ground up. She no longer second-guessed her instincts or passively accepted others' assessments of her worth. She knew precisely what she was capable of, and she was no longer afraid to showcase it. Her relationship with Mark had also deepened into something real and profoundly meaningful. Unlike her marriage to Robert, which had been built on Sarah's endless sacrifices and Robert's insatiable demands, her connection with Mark was founded on mutual respect, genuine partnership, and an unwavering commitment to honesty. "I love watching you work," Mark told her one evening as she meticulously finished an intricate necklace design. "You get this focused, determined look on your face. It's beautiful." Sarah smiled. Robert had never once watched her work on anything with genuine interest, let alone admiration. He had barely acknowledged her creative projects existed. "Do you ever miss being married?" Mark asked, a thoughtful question. Sarah considered it seriously. "I miss the idea of marriage," she admitted, "the partnership, the shared goals, the feeling of building something together. But I don't miss being married to Robert. That wasn't a partnership. That was me being a supporting character in his story. And now I'm the main character in my own story." It was a profound realization that still amazed Sarah sometimes. For so many years, her identity had been inextricably linked to being Robert's wife. She had measured her success by how effectively she supported his career, how flawlessly she managed their household, how little trouble she caused him. Now she measured her success by her own achievements, her own happiness, her own personal growth. It was an entirely different way of living, and Sarah embraced it with every fiber of her being. Of course, subtle reminders of the past still surfaced. Every month, Sarah received a spousal support check from Robert's prison account, money automatically deducted from his commissary deposits and sent directly to her. It was a modest amount compared to what he would ultimately owe her upon his release, but it served as a potent, monthly reminder that actions, indeed, have consequences. Sarah also received occasional letters from Robert, which she promptly discarded, unopened. She had no interest in his belated apologies, his self-serving explanations, or his desperate attempts to elicit her pity. He had made his choices, and now he was living with the stark, inescapable results. Jennifer, meanwhile, had been sentenced to 18 months in prison and was facing her own severe consequences. Sarah had heard through mutual friends that Jennifer's family had disowned her, and she had lost her apartment and most of her possessions. The woman who had envisioned moving into Sarah's house and living off Sarah's stolen money was now sleeping on a prison cot, working in the laundry for 20 cents an hour. Sarah felt no sympathy for either of them. They had conspired to destroy an innocent person's life for their own selfish pleasure. The fact that their elaborate plan had backfired so spectacularly was, to Sarah, simply justice. The true satisfaction stemmed from witnessing how completely her own life had improved, while theirs had spiraled into utter ruin. Robert had deluded himself into believing he was trading up, exchanging his boring, stable wife for an exciting new life with his young mistress. Instead, he had traded a comfortable life and a successful career for a prison cell and a criminal record. Jennifer had believed she was stealing a rich, successful man from his pathetic wife. Instead, she had actively helped destroy both their lives, while Sarah emerged stronger, wealthier, and more vibrant than ever before. "You know what the funniest part is?" Sarah told Linda Morrison during one of their occasional lunches, a thoughtful expression on her face. "Robert was right about one thing. I was too trusting, too willing to believe the best about people. But that wasn't weakness. That was decency. And now I'm still decent, but I'm not naive. I trust people who earn it, and I protect myself from people who don't." It was hard-won wisdom, but Sarah was profoundly grateful for it. She vowed never again to ignore glaring red flags or to make excuses for anyone who inflicted pain upon her. She had learned to value herself too deeply to accept poor treatment from anyone. As autumn gently transitioned into winter, Sarah reflected on the seismic shifts her life had undergone in just 1 year. 12 months prior, she had been a woman living a lie, married to a man systematically orchestrating her destruction. Now, she was a thriving entrepreneur, a confident woman, and someone who genuinely adored the person she had become. The transformation had not been without its challenges. There were still nights when she cried herself to sleep, not for Robert, but for the 8 wasted years she had dedicated to a love that was ultimately a cruel illusion. There were moments of doubt when she questioned if her pursuit of justice had been too harsh, too vindictive. But each time those insidious doubts crept in, Sarah vividly recalled the messages. Robert and Jennifer's laughter at her perceived stupidity, the fabricated journal detailing mental health episodes that never occurred, his cold-blooded plan to leave her homeless and penniless with money he had stolen. No, she hadn't been too harsh. She had been exactly as strong as the situation demanded. One evening, as Sarah was meticulously closing her boutique, she noticed a familiar figure standing across the street. For a fleeting moment, her heart raced with old, residual fears. But as the person stepped into the warm glow of the streetlight, she recognized him. Mike, Robert's brother. Mike crossed the street and approached cautiously. "Hi, Sarah. I hope it's okay that I'm here. I wanted to talk to you." Sarah studied Robert's brother. Mike had consistently treated her with kindness and had courageously testified on her behalf during the divorce proceedings. "What did you want to talk about?" Sarah asked. "I wanted to apologize," Mike said, his voice sincere. "For Robert, for my family, for not seeing what was happening sooner. And I wanted to tell you that I'm proud of you for fighting back." Sarah felt an unexpected warmth spread through her. "Thank you, that means a lot." "Robert wrote to me from prison," Mike continued. "He asked me to ask you to visit him. He says he wants to apologize properly." Sarah shook her head immediately. "I'm not interested." "I figured you'd say that," Mike acknowledged. "And honestly, I think you're right. Robert made his choices, and now he has to live with them. But I wanted to ask, just in case." They stood in comfortable silence for a moment before Mike spoke again. "You know, I always thought you deserved better than Robert, even before all this happened. You were always too good for him. I don't think I was too good for anyone," Sarah clarified gently. "I just deserve to be treated with honesty and respect. Everyone does." Mike nodded. "Well, for what it's worth, it looks like you're doing amazing now. I'm happy for you." After Mike left, Sarah reflected on his visit. It was reassuring to receive confirmation that she had made the right choices, that even Robert's own family could recognize the extent of his egregious mistreatment. But more than that, it was profoundly satisfying to realize she no longer needed anyone else's validation. She knew she had done the right thing. She knew she was strong, successful, and worthy of respect. She didn't require Robert's hollow apologies or anyone else's approval to feel good about her life. That night, Sarah had dinner with Mark at a new downtown restaurant. As they discussed their holiday plans, her business expansion, and their blossoming future together, Sarah marveled at the profound difference from her marriage to Robert. With Robert, every conversation had been singularly focused on his work, his problems, his needs. Sarah's designated role had been to listen, to support, to agree. Her own thoughts and feelings were, at best, secondary. With Mark, their conversations were genuine dialogues. He was deeply interested in her opinions, unreservedly supportive of her goals, and genuinely excited about her successes. He didn't perceive her achievements as competition or as threats to his masculinity. He saw them as reasons to be proud of the woman he cherished. "I have something to tell you," Mark said, leaning across the table as they shared dessert. Sarah looked up from her chocolate cake, intrigued. "I got the promotion," Mark announced with a triumphant grin. "I'm the new regional manager." Sarah jumped up and hugged him, genuinely thrilled by his good news. This, she realized, was the essence of a real partnership, celebrating each other's victories instead of competing or tearing each other down. "We should celebrate," Sarah suggested. "Actually," Mark said, his eyes twinkling, "I was thinking we could celebrate by taking that trip to Italy we've been talking about now that we can both afford some time off." Sarah smiled. A year ago, she had been meticulously planning anniversary dinners for a man who was actively cheating on her. Now she was planning European vacations with someone who genuinely wanted to share his life and time with her. The contrast was almost comical. As they walked back to Sarah's house that night, she reflected on how utterly transformed her life had become. Robert had attempted to steal her future, but instead, he had inadvertently given her the impetus she needed to build a far better one. She was successful, happy, deeply loved, and most importantly, free. Free from lies, from manipulation, from the exhausting, thankless work of striving for perfection for someone who never appreciated her efforts. Tomorrow, she would awaken in her own house, go to her own thriving business, make her own decisions about her own life. She would never again have to wonder if her husband was lying to her or worry that someone was plotting her destruction while she slept. Robert was spending his nights in a prison cell, undoubtedly wondering how his meticulously crafted plan had gone so spectacularly wrong. Jennifer was doing the same in a women's correctional facility. Sarah, meanwhile, was spending her nights planning her bright future with a man who truly deserved her love. She had won, completely, and the victory tasted sweeter with each passing day. 1 year after Robert's sentencing, Sarah received a letter that made her laugh out loud. It wasn't from Robert. She had diligently returned all his attempts at communication, unopened. This letter was from the parole board, informing her that Robert had applied for early release and asking if she wished to make a statement for or against his parole. Sarah threw the letter away without a second thought. Robert would serve his full sentence, as far as she was concerned. He had planned to completely destroy her life, and 3 years in prison was a minuscule price to pay for that level of profound betrayal. But the letter did spark a period of reflection, reminding her just how much had changed since that terrible night when she first stumbled upon Robert's messages with Jennifer. It felt like a lifetime ago, though only 2 years had passed since her world had been catastrophically upended. Sarah's jewelry business was now so incredibly successful that she had hired 3 employees and was actively considering opening a second location. Her unique designs had been featured in a national magazine and had garnered a loyal clientele from across the country. What had initially begun as an act of defiance against Robert's dismissive attitude toward her hobbies had blossomed into a thriving enterprise that generated more income than Robert's law practice ever had. Her relationship with Mark had also evolved into something beautiful and enduring. 6 months prior, he had proposed to her in the very same garden where she used to sit and meticulously plan Robert's downfall. The delicious irony had not been lost on Sarah. In the exact spot where she had plotted revenge against one man, another man had solemnly promised to love and honor her for the rest of their lives. "Are you sure you want to get married again?" Mark had asked, after she joyfully accepted, a note of concern in his voice. "After everything Robert put you through." "Robert didn't put me through marriage," Sarah had replied, her voice firm. "He put me through betrayal and abuse. What we have is completely different." And it was different, in every conceivable way. Where Robert had demanded that Sarah diminish herself to accommodate his ego, Mark encouraged her to fully occupy all the space she deserved. Where Robert had viewed her success as competition, Mark saw it as something to genuinely celebrate. Where Robert had lied to her daily for months, Mark was almost painfully honest about everything. Most importantly, Mark saw Sarah as an equal partner, not as a mere supporting character in his story. They were planning a small, intimate wedding for the spring. Nothing elaborate, just a heartfelt celebration of their true partnership with the people who mattered most to them. Sarah was eagerly looking forward to it, though she sometimes marveled at how profoundly different this engagement felt from her first. When she had gotten engaged to Robert, she had been young and naive, utterly convinced that love alone would conquer any obstacle. She had been so consumed with the desire to be the perfect wife that she had entirely neglected to observe whether Robert was being a good husband. This time, Sarah knew exactly what she was entering into. She and Mark had built their relationship slowly, meticulously, brick by honest brick, based on unwavering trust and mutual respect. She wasn't marrying him to complete herself or to gain security. She was marrying him because they genuinely made each other better, stronger people. The stark contrast between her two relationships was a constant reminder, and in an odd, unexpected way, it made Sarah grateful for Robert's betrayal. If he hadn't shown her precisely what a toxic marriage looked like, she might never have recognized how incredibly good Mark was for her. Of course, the most enduring aspect of Sarah's new life was the profound financial security that Robert's spectacular destruction had inadvertently provided. The spousal support payments continued to arrive every single month, even from prison, a constant, tangible reminder that actions have inescapable consequences. When Robert was finally released, he would owe Sarah over $200,000 in back support, plus accrued interest. But even more valuable than the money was the profound knowledge that Sarah had built her success entirely herself. Her thriving jewelry business was a testament to her talent, her resilience, and her sheer hard work, entirely independent of anyone else's support or sacrifice. She had unequivocally proven to herself that she was capable of far more than Robert had ever given her credit for. Sometimes, Sarah still wondered what would have happened if she had never discovered Robert's affair. Would he have succeeded in his monstrous plan to leave her destitute? Would she have spent years battling a divorce case, utterly bewildered, without understanding the intricate web of deception surrounding their finances? The thought made her shudder. Robert's carelessness with his laptop, the seemingly minor oversight, had ironically been the catalyst for the best thing that ever happened to her, even though it had felt like the end of her world at the time. Now, 2 years later, Sarah could perceive the bigger picture with crystalline clarity. Robert hadn't just been cheating on her. He had been systematically dismantling their marriage while cunningly planning to blame her for its inevitable failure. He'd been stealing from her while subtly making her feel guilty for spending money on bare necessities. He had been gaslighting her, subtly eroding her sanity, while meticulously documenting fabricated evidence of her mental instability. The man she had trusted implicitly had been her worst enemy, and she had been too deeply in love, too trusting, to see it. But Sarah's love hadn't been entirely wasted. It had simply been misdirected. She had loved an idea of Robert, a version of him that had never truly existed, a construct of her hopeful imagination. The real Robert was selfish, cruel, and calculating. She was, undeniably, infinitely better off without him. One evening, as Sarah was working late in her boutique, she received an unexpected phone call. It was Carol, her dear friend, who had steadfastly supported her through the darkest days of the divorce. "Sarah, you're not going to believe this," Carol said, barely containing her laughter. "What happened?" "I just saw Jennifer at the grocery store. She's working there as a cashier and she looks terrible. Her hair is stringy, she's gained weight, and she was wearing a name tag that said, trainee." Sarah felt a momentary flicker of something akin to sympathy, but it passed quickly. Jennifer, like Robert, had made her choices. "Did she see you?" Sarah asked. "Oh, yes. And she looked like she wanted to disappear into the floor. I don't think her life worked out quite the way she planned." After Carol hung up, Sarah thought about Jennifer's current situation. The woman who had brazenly planned to move into Sarah's beautiful house and live off Sarah's stolen money was now working a minimum wage job at a grocery store. She had recklessly thrown away a decent career to become an accessory to a married man's fraud. And now, she was paying the steep price for that disastrous decision. It was, Sarah thought, almost poetic justice. Robert and Jennifer had both harbored a profound, arrogant belief in their own cleverness, their superiority to the boring wife they were so effortlessly deceiving. They had congratulated themselves on their intelligence while meticulously planning to destroy an innocent person's life. Now, Robert was serving time in prison, his law license irrevocably revoked, his future consisting of menial minimum wage jobs and the daunting burden of monthly payments to the very woman he had tried to ruin. Jennifer was toiling as a grocery store cashier, likely still shackled by the crushing weight of legal fees from her criminal defense. Meanwhile, Sarah was at the helm of a highly successful business, planning her second wedding and living the rich, fulfilling life she had always deserved, but never dared to fully ask for. The woman they had so confidently dismissed as too stupid to fight back had, in the end, outsmarted them both completely. As Sarah locked up her boutique that night, she reflected on the extraordinary journey that had led her to this triumphant moment. 2 years ago, she had been devastated, utterly betrayed, and profoundly broken. She had felt as though her life was over, as if she had irrevocably wasted 8 precious years on a man who had never truly loved her. Now she knew better. Those 8 years hadn't been wasted. They had imparted invaluable, albeit painful, lessons about what she would and would not tolerate in a relationship. Robert's betrayal hadn't destroyed her. It had, in fact, revealed her innate strength, her extraordinary resilience, and her profound capacity for self-reinvention. Most importantly, Robert's attempt to steal her future had, against all odds, gifted her a better one. If he had merely been content with a simple, honest divorce, Sarah might have quietly walked away with half their assets and started over. Instead, his insatiable greed and shocking cruelty had ignited a fire within her, motivating her to fight back with every fiber of her being. The ultimate result was that Sarah had secured far more than half their assets, plus substantial, ongoing support payments, plus the profound satisfaction of witnessing Robert face criminal consequences for his egregious actions. She had also unearthed her own incredible capabilities and built a hugely successful business that was entirely her own creation. Robert had gambled everything on his misguided belief that Sarah was weak, stupid, and defeated. He had lost that bet in the most spectacular, resounding way possible. Now, as Sarah drove home to the beautiful house that was entirely hers, to the kind and loving man who actually cherished and respected her, to the vibrant life she had meticulously built from the ashes of Robert's betrayal, she felt nothing but an overwhelming sense of gratitude. She was grateful for her newfound strength, grateful for her resounding success, grateful for Mark's unwavering love, and yes, even grateful for Robert's profound betrayal, because without it, she never would have truly discovered who she really was or the incredible woman she was capable of becoming. Robert had tried to write her out of the story of her own life. Instead, he had unwittingly helped her become the undeniable, triumphant hero of that story.